So this is going to be the basics. This is 101. So if you already have a podcast or you're doing this will be a good refresher, hopefully. If you don't know anything about podcasting, this will hopefully open your eyes up to what's required and what you'll need to do. And as Brian mentioned, really, you don't necessarily have to have the top-of-the-line equipment to start your podcast. We like to say you can just start ugly and just do it and get in there, and that's very important to do. I do like to just mention at the beginning of the presentation some statistics just to show you what's happening in the industry right now. You can see the number of new podcasts published worldwide. Obviously, during COVID, during the pandemic, we had a huge jump in podcasts being published. It's just remarkable. Now it's gone moderating itself there, but still in 2023, you can see here 161,000.
Do we know what's happening in 24?
Not yet, because we're still in 24. So, but we're expecting at least maintaining the number of podcasts that are being published. Share of respondents who listened to podcasts worldwide from 2019 to 2022 by frequency. Most people, half of the people approximately, are light listeners. Even super listeners there, you could see in 2022, almost a quarter of the worldwide population will listen to a podcast on a regular basis. These are the leading genres on Spotify worldwide. People like to laugh, so they're like comedy, society and culture, lifestyle and health, true crime, education's there at the bottom. Number of podcast listeners in the United States, you can see it is slowly growing. 2024, they were estimating by the end of the year, you're going to have, it's 109 million, and that's going to be going up to almost 10 million more in about 2 years. Preferred streaming platforms for podcast consumption. I think they spelled consumption wrong. That's interesting. Got to contact Statista there. This is, by the way, from Statista, which is a database that we have here at the Miller Business Center that you can access for free. Looks like Spotify is on the top there. Apple Podcasts, Google, Audible. You can see they're all there.
Excuse me, do you
yes.
mind if we ask questions as
You can absolutely ask questions, yes. And please don't be offended if I repeat your question just because I want to make sure it gets picked up on the microphone, so because I'm recording. Okay, yeah, so definitely it's very informal. So how many podcasts are there? There are at least 3.3 million podcasts, which is crazy. Those are, it's amazing, through worldwide, and 196 million episodes in the world. This is based on listennotes.com, which is a statistical website. By contrast, Internet Movie Database has over 8.3 million titles, so that's movies, TV shows, TV episodes. Spotify has over 70 million tracks, those are songs, and Audible has over 470,000 audiobooks. So as far as consumption is concerned, there's something for everyone out there in the world of podcasting. So let's say you have an idea for a podcast, because everybody just wants to jump in, they just want to sit down, turn the microphone on, and go. But we can't do that. We need to think about, what you're going to say, what you're going to do. So you want to think about what your show will be about. You want to define the subject and the scope, and we suggest that you start simple. So if you're a small business owner, what most of you are going to want to use your podcast for, and what we like to push here at the center, is you're using your podcast to, one, add some legitimacy to what you're doing. So, you're putting yourself out there. And two, perhaps you want to educate your customers and or your potential customers of what you do, how you do it, how you can help them, and also how they can help themselves, right? I mean, that's what most people listen to podcasts for, self-help and entertainment and education. So format, length, and tone. Is your show going to be an interview show? Is it going to be conversational? Is it just you telling a story? or is it an actual storytelling? Because, there are podcasts out there that are fictional, that people go to listen to a story that maybe you've written, and maybe that's your business. You're an author and you want to get your book out there in an audiobook format. Is it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? So this doesn't necessarily mean, when we get into the production side of things, this doesn't mean that you are recording every single week. It just means you're releasing every single week. And what we suggest is that you, at least at the minimum, try your very best to do a bi-weekly show. Weekly, obviously, is the best, because the attention span of the average reader now, the average listener nowadays, is unfortunately very short. Even people who view videos on YouTube, it's very short. The average viewer will watch 2 to 3 minutes and then they go off to something else. So you want to think about how long your show is going to be and how deeply you're going to get into whatever subject you're talking about. Is it educational? Is it entertainment? Is it instructional? Is it all three of those things? You want to think about, is it a straightforward, I'm getting up here on the camera or I'm getting on the microphone and I'm basically going to teach you one subject this week and that's it and that's all it's going to be? Or how I like it, it's not just teaching you a subject, but it's also getting to know you, your potential customers. I'm the president of my business, and this is what I do, and I'm the creator. And you create that relationship. It's not a personal relationship initially. It's just someone coming to your show and listening to you, but you're creating that relationship. You're making a connection.
Is there a means for them to give you feedback?
Yes, there is a means to get feedback. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Short subject or long form. So I like to ask, what's the average commute time on Long Island? Does anybody know what the average commute time on Long Island is? It's terrible.
45 minutes.
It's almost 45. It's 33 minutes is the average commute time on Long Island. So is your show going to take up that whole commute? So you're going to have a 33-minute show or a 30-minute show? Our shows here at the library are about between 22 and 25 minutes. That's the average show. If it's a long form, they might listen to you on the way to work and on the way home. Or you can be crazy and do something like, Joe Rogan. He has this very conversational show. His shows can go up to like 3.5, 4 hours, which is crazy. So you're literally like listening to the show either straight through or you're going to take it in pieces. So that's something you want to think about. Also, who is your audience? What is your goal? For most of you, the goal is going to be to drive business, right? To bring people to your business. For some of you, the podcast might be your business. You want to be a podcaster. You want to make money doing your podcast, okay? So that is something you need to think about, because your approach to your podcast is going to be two completely separate things, okay? If you're a small business owner and you're using your podcast to market your business and to connect with your customers, you're going to have to think about how much time am I spending on my podcast as compared to how much time I'm spending on actually building business and doing my business. Okay? Whereas a podcaster, a full-time podcaster, that's all you're going to be thinking about is building your podcast. Also, you want to think about marketing. How will you market your podcast? We're going to go over some of the marketing ideas. And I'll tell you right off the bat that I'm a huge hypocrite when it comes to this, because I should market our podcast a little better than we do, but we'll talk about the different things that you can try to do that. But no matter what, just start. And if you have to, start ugly. There's a book that you can get on Amazon by Chris Krimitsos, who is the creator of the Podfest Expo, which is an annual podcasting conference that they have every winter down in Florida. And he wrote this book. And basically, if you were to go down to Podfest, if you were to go and meet up with all these podcasters, what they're going to tell you right off the bat is, if you have an idea, just do it. Don't worry about how you look. Don't worry about how you sound. Don't worry about how the show sounds. Don't worry about how many people are going to hear it. Just do it. Okay? That is probably the most difficult thing about podcasting, is starting and actually getting it going. Okay? And you're going to see, as an example, our podcast, the evolution of the podcast, how we literally started in a closet just using whatever I was able to find in the AV closet, in the media closet, and just starting from there and then moving on to where we are today, and we're still always evolving with the show, and you will be as well. Okay, so we're going to go over some lingo that you may or may not have heard about before. So before you get on the microphone, before you start your show, we're going to talk about some things that I didn't know when I first started podcasting. So you have 3 steps here. We're going to capture your content, we're going to edit and produce your show, and then we're going to publish and distribute your show. Now on week 3, which is October 30th, we're going to concentrate only on that middle one, which is digital audio workstations and editing and producing your show. Okay? So week 3, if you want to, if you're interested in the technical part of it, we're going to talk about that. But when it comes to capturing your content, you need some sort of equipment, obviously, to capture your content. So you're going to hear stuff like microphone. Obviously, we all know what microphone is. Mixing board, all in one. You can use your smartphone if you like to record your show. Digital audio workstation is where you're going to edit and produce your show. It's a piece of software. So imagine Microsoft Word. We all use, I'm sure, some sort of word processor. We write something down, we edit it, we move stuff around, we take things off, we put things on, we add some pictures, that kind of stuff. That is, in a nutshell, what a DAW is, but in an audio format. And a video format is another piece of software. And then we need to publish and distribute our show so people can access it and hear it. So that's hosting and feed management. Now, many of you, as I did, might think that when you're done with your first episode, you take it and you send it to Apple, and then Apple puts it on their podcast app, and everybody's happy. But that's not the way it works. You need to set up something that gets your show out there. And I will tell you that as much as we here at the library love talking about free things, right? And we will offer you access to our studio for free. And as much as we talk about that, unfortunately, there will be a cost involved with getting your podcast out there. It doesn't have to be a huge cost, but there will be a cost involved. We'll get to that in a moment. So recording equipment. I did mention these before. So your smartphone. Yes, I have recorded a full episode of a podcast on my smartphone. Microphone, this one in particular, a USB microphone. These are microphones that you plug directly into a computer. So you record the audio from the microphone right into the computer digitally.
Well, you have a microphone in the computer.
You do.
But
it's not going to be as great. Like I said, you can start that way if you like, but yes, there are microphones in computers. They are getting better as technology improves, but for something like this, you could probably get that for under $50, and you get a great sound coming out of it. This is the Rodecaster Pro 1. This is the equipment that we have here at the library that you'll have access to. It is an all-in-one, so it's a mixing board. It does all the audio processing on there for you, which is amazing because you put the headphones on and you speak into the microphone. You're like, oh, I sound like a radio star when I listen to this. So you have that.
What is that called again?
It's the Rodecaster Pro. Okay, something like that, if you were to purchase it yourself, is going to run you around $600. So again, not super expensive, but expensive enough for you not to have to do that and just use our equipment, if you like. And then finally, you'll have like these handheld recorders. And now I might be aging myself, but when I was a kid, our little recorders had the little tiny micro tapes. Remember those? You put them in, you press the button, you can so like the spy recorders. That's the digital version of it now, and that particular one is a Tascam. So you have all these different things to capture your content.
Now that board, would that capture the recording?
Yep.
And you wouldn't need that.
Exactly. So you can use that board by itself to capture the audio, or how we have it set up here is you can use that board to capture audio and send it to the software. Okay, so you can edit separately. Okay?
Is there someone that shows you how to use that?
Yes. Yes. So at the end of the presentation, I'll tell you how the process that you'll have to take in order to become a certified creator at our studio. So we will give you all that info. So again, we mentioned DAWs, digital audio workstations. That's the software that you can use to take this audio and edit it. And so these are just different types. If you have a Mac, if you're a Mac person, you already have GarageBand completely free. If you have a PC, you can download Audacity for free. Those are both very good DAW software. However, here at the library, we have Hindenburg, which again, in 2 weeks from now, we will talk about using that software to edit your show. Yeah, so I'm not going to get too deep into that, but these are different terms you might hear regarding that. And now, so we have the creation, the gathering of the content, the editing of the content, and now the posting of the content, getting the content out there. First, remote recording. So you can record your show remotely. You can have someone on the other side of the world, you can interview them using the remote recording. Some of these, again, are free, and some of these you have to pay for. Some of them, there's ways around it. Like Zoom, for example, I do believe Zoom still they give you a half hour for free.
40 minutes.
40 minutes for free. You can absolutely record an interview in 40 minutes or less for free. Bless you. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that as well. So remote recording, you get a software like Squadcast, for example, which is high quality audio and video with individual tracks. Okay, that's a service that you pay for. Or you can do, like I said, the free Zoom 40-minute meeting and just record the audio off of your Zoom call. All right? Now, cross-content is king. Okay? So recording the audio of your show is great, but recording video with your audio is even better because now you have other venues that you can have your show sent out there. So you do not have to have a professional camera to do that. You can just use your cell phone camera, which is what I would say 90% of our podcasters, our creators who use the studio downstairs, that's exactly what they're doing. We have a mount, they put the camera on the mount, they turn the light on, they hit record on the iPhone or on the Android, and they record the video portion of their show that way. It's usually 1080p, it's like high definition. The studio is small, and we'll have pictures of it, and if there's no one in there, there might be actually someone recording today, but you can peek in, there's a window. The studio is small, so the iPhone and the Android phone is actually it's a great, enough of a wide screen to pick everybody up there. So that's what a lot of people are doing. We do have a webcam down in the studio. You can also use a webcam as well. And the publishing. So how do I publish? Again, when I first started this, I really, really thought, okay, I just take my show and I email it to somebody or I upload it somewhere, and that wasn't the case. So how it works is most podcast distributors do not host your show, actually host your audio files, okay? Your audio files, your actual show, or your video files, if you're doing YouTube, well, YouTube is different. I'm jumping ahead. Audio files have to be somewhere for the directories to find them. So Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, they're all just directories. That's all they are. They take a little file, it's called an XML file, it's a feed file. They take that, they look at it, they see, this is the title of the show, this is the description of the show, this is who's running the show, this is who's on the show, and this is the actual file where the audio is. They take that and they put that on their apps, okay? That's all they're doing. All you're doing as a creator is telling them where to go to find that file, okay? You will need to host your audio with a hosting provider or use a web hosting provider, okay? A website to host your show. Podcasts are distributed via something called RSS, which is really simple syndication. And using a podcast hosting company, it may incur a cost, but in many cases, it's a turnkey situation. So you log in to your account, you upload your file, You do a little typing, a little description, and you hit post. And then that hosting company sends it to Apple, sends it to Google, sends it to iHeartRadio, sends it to Amazon, all on your behalf. Okay? So
There's a fee for that.
there is a fee for that, absolutely. We'll talk about it in a moment, yes. Okay, so podcast hosting, these are some podcast hosting companies. Now, I'm going to be very neutral here. I'm not going to tell you who's the best, who works, what works for you, but I will tell you that the library uses Podbean. And the reason why we use Podbean is because as a non-for-profit, it costs us $110 a year to host our podcast. Okay? Very, very inexpensive for a nonprofit. If you're not a nonprofit, it'll run you about $20 a month. Yes, there's a cost involved here, okay? But for $5 a week, for $4 a week, it's not that bad after, tax, okay? So that's the average hosting cost for a lot of those that I showed you there. But wait, there's more. It's not just that cost of the hosting company, that technology that you're paying for. It's also your commitment. It's your time, okay? Time is very important in this equation. Now, our show, I mentioned before at the beginning, is about 23 minutes long. Does anybody want to guess how long it takes to actually put that all together?
10 hours.
Not 10 hours. I'm pretty good. I'm faster than 10. Does anybody want to guess? 3? Close. It's 2 hours. 2 hours to do a 23-minute show. Okay? Now, what does that mean? That's the prep. That's setting up the lights. That's making sure all the cameras are ready, making sure the audio board is ready. So that's the basic stuff there. That's the actual picking the subject, writing any notes down, having that all ready. It's the actual recording of the episode, which takes approximately a 23-minute show, probably 25 to 30 minutes, because there's some stopping, there's starting. One of my co-hosts sneezes, I have to edit that out. There's some, inappropriate banter for some reason, I have to cut out all those little things, okay? So that gets recorded, the starting and the stopping and whatnot. And then there's the actual editing part of it. There's the putting the bumpers on. So the logo at the beginning, the logo at the end, the music at the beginning, the music at the end, the little bug that sits in the corner that has our logo. All this kind of stuff, all gets edited, all gets put together. Taking out all the ums and the pauses and the awkward parts and all that kind of stuff. That, in general, all together, I do that, and then I have to upload the file to Podbean, and I have to upload the video to YouTube. Write the descriptions, make sure everything's all right. If there's any copyright issues, I got to make sure those go through. So all that takes about 2 hours for one episode. So as a small business owner doing your small business and building your business on its own, you have to think about, what am I committing to do my podcast? And that's why I always say, do not record 1 week's worth of episode in 1 week. Record 3 episodes in 1 week. Record 4 episodes in 1 week. We give you downstairs 3 hours in one session to do your work, and we do that twice a month. So you get 6 hours total for free to sit down there and work on stuff. Okay? You could do a whole 6 months worth, if you wanted to, if you're a monthly podcast, in 2 sittings.
Does anyone do live? No.
No, there's no live. Yeah, I mean, you could do live on your own, but not here at the library. It's just, you can't guarantee your spot. It's just whenever it's available. So something that's live, you're going to want to tell people, I go out live every Monday at 4 p.m. It's not possible here. Okay? Yes?
Why did you say you have to keep 2 separate files, the audio and download it on YouTube?
Yeah, so for us, I do all my editing now video. So I do the whole show is now a video show. So the audio I'm capturing with my board, and the video I'm capturing with my cameras. I take the audio and video and I sync them together using Final Cut Pro. And then once everything's edited and everything's put together, I take that file and I split it up again, because that's the edited file. And I take the audio out, post the audio to Podbean, because Podbean is a separate service than YouTube.
So is that only like audio?
Audio only on Podbean, yeah.
That's
Mhm.
why.
Audio only. Your logo and your branding. And I put this little thing up here because I wanted to make a point here that you'd be surprised how important your logo, your podcast album cover, your podcast cover image is, because this is how people look for podcasts now. They literally scroll through and they look for these pictures. So are you going to want to be just the plain one down here, or are you going on something that has like flames coming out of there? You have to think about your brand on that. Music licensing. You're not just going to be able to get Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen as the theme song of your podcast. That's not how it works. We, for our podcast here at the library, we do pay the licensing for a licensing fee. Okay, so we do pay per year about, I think it's like $300 a year to license music and B-roll video and all that kind of stuff. So you can also go out onto the internet. You could look for royalty-free music and purchase a license for a song. You hear a song you really like, for $40 you can purchase it, the license to use that song on your show. So if you're posting on YouTube, for example, you could very easily get a copyright strike, or they could demonetize you, they could pull your video if it's not something that's licensed. Okay? So it's very important to do your due diligence on that and make sure whatever music you're using, you license the music so it's official, okay? And I'm going to jump over to legal considerations. Again, you want to make sure that everything that you're doing on your podcast, if it's going out to the public, that it's all follows whatever rules are maintained by whatever service you're using, okay? Now, there is something called fair use. If you're doing an educational podcast, or you're talking about something educational, you should be able to use like 30 seconds of something or a minute of something for fair use. Again, you have to look to see what that responsibility on your end is.
Is there a list of fair use items?
Well, fair use is actually like it's a procedure. It's not just items. So, for example, a big thing right now is parody, right? So if I want to make a parody of a movie or something like that, technically I'm allowed to do that legally because it's a parody. I have to label it as a parody, but it's a parody. Okay, I can't, if I do like a Top Gun parody where I'm flying around a cardboard box and I have the music and I call the characters and all that kind of stuff in the parking lot, I'm protected. I shouldn't have Paramount come after me because I'm making my own Top Gun movie using their music. That's the type of thing. Okay, so there's little things like that you have to look into. Usually not an issue, to be honest. I mean, you're all probably going to not have to run into this issue as long as you just do what you want to do and follow the process correctly. So for your first go, you want to write your episode outline. It's always good for your first episode, you write it out, you know what you want to say, you know what it's going to be. So, okay, introductions, purpose of this podcast, purpose of this episode, mission statement, okay? So you're writing down, I want my, again, I mentioned it, if you weren't here before, there'll be a QR code at the end so you can download the presentation. I want my audience by the end of this podcast to know this. I want to drive my audience at the end of this podcast to this, this event I'm doing in Hauppauge, or this website that I have, or my brick and mortar shop, that kind of thing. That's the goal for this episode. So you want to write all that down, and also write any copy that's important to you and your audience. I can't tell you how many times I hit stop on the recorder and I realize, shoot, I forgot to say the telephone number. Or I forgot to mention the event that's coming up next week, that kind of stuff. Because our podcast is very conversational, it's very loose, it's very matter of, stream of consciousness sometimes. And there's important things that I have to get out there. So write it down, put it in front of you so you know by the end of the show you're actually saying that, because it's such a pain to have to go back and re-record it or just insert it. It's just like a whole other 15, 20 minutes for like 30 seconds. It's not worth it. So schedule your time appropriately. I mentioned how long it takes, recording and editing. And if you have guests, and again, next week we'll talk about the whole interview process, but if you have guests, you should be upfront with what will be discussed. This isn't Maury Povich, okay? They should know what they're going to talk about. Now, there's two schools of thought with the sharing of the questions, okay? I've done it both ways. We've sent questions to the people we're interviewing so they know what to expect. And at the other side of it, people that I'm more familiar with, I just tell them what subjects we're going to be talking about. So it's not the actual questions. If you do share the questions, you want the person on the other end to know that they shouldn't practice the answers. They should just know the answers. So it doesn't sound rehearsed when you're asking the questions and then all of a sudden they're boom, 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 you want someone listening to your show to feel like they're sitting in a room with you and you're just having a general discussion. So I like to be upfront and tell them, okay, this is what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you about the book. I'm going to ask you, how you came up with the idea for the book. I'm going to ask you what your writing process was, yada, yada, yada. Okay? You could send that ahead of time before you even hit the record button. Because you want to make them comfortable. You want to have a good experience for them. Because when we get to the marketing part of it, that last line there, it's going to be very important for them to have an enjoyable time on your show. Explain the process ahead of time. I like to call this pre-flight. If I have someone that I'm interviewing downstairs, for example, I tell them, okay, this is how close I want you to be to the microphone. If you make a mistake, I want you to raise your hand, say, I want to do that over. We're going to do a pause. We're going to pause 5 seconds of silence, and then we're going to start up again. Or I might say, don't worry about making a mistake. It's okay if you make a mistake. We're going to edit it out, or whatever. You want to make them comfortable. And if you are remote, you want to make sure that their equipment is up to date, working, and compatible. So I have done phone interviews where the person is like driving to Westchester, and it's like, no, we should do this again. We should do this another time because you're breaking up and it's not going to be very good. Okay, so if you're doing a phone interview, if they still have a landline phone, have them call you on the landline phone. If they don't have a landline phone, make sure they're in a nice quiet space with their cell phone, so this way you get a good audio capture on that. If you're doing a Zoom call, for example, with them, what microphone are they using? Are they using headphones? Is their dog going to be barking in the background? All that kind of stuff. So this is stuff you want to prep them for before you go. And they are your first advertisers, so make sure they let people know that they are on your show. So if you have a comfortable person, your guest is comfortable, they had a great time, they're going to let everybody know how great they sounded on your show, and those people are going to come to your show, they're going to download your show, they're going to listen to your show, and hopefully, not all of them, but some of them are going to subscribe, and they're going to stay with you. Okay? So that is very important. So best practices. Know your equipment. Learn how to speak into a microphone. I know that sounds funny, but I can't tell you how many times I used to have to tell my co-host, get closer, please, get close to the microphone. Consider using a boom stand and a headset, okay, instead of, something that's not on the table. So something that's like hanging, for example, or a headset, those are really nice where the microphone's right here. Recording, location. I mentioned before, our studio for the library podcast, the one that we do in-house, is in a former closet. Literally was a closet. It was a big walk-in closet. We had to pull everything out. There's no windows. It's in the corner of the building. There's not a lot of traffic over there. I don't even think we don't have like an air conditioning vent that can turn on and off or anything like that, so it's very, very good. Our studio downstairs is soundproofed, though. We have soundproofing on that. So find a quiet spot with little or no ambient sound. Avoid items that could cause sound issues, rustling papers, banging on tables, squeaky chairs, all that kind of stuff. Again, these are things, eventually you want it to sound good in this way. You can start ugly, start simple, but then you want to move up to where it's sounding good. And show prep is important. The more prepared, the less ums you have, although I am a very good remover of ums. All right, so let me give you an example and how we started our podcast. So it's the Middle Country Public Library Podcast. It's a weekly podcast meant to educate and entertain listeners with all the wonderful things that we have here, that we offer here at the library. Okay, it's co-hosted, conversational, and we have segments. The average show length, like I said, is about 20 to 22 minutes. We post new episodes every Thursday. It started out very simple and worked our way up to more sophisticated equipment. So, like I said, we had them clear out the closet. I went to the AV cabinet. I found some old microphones. I found an old mixing board. I asked the computer department if they had any extra computers lying around. They gave me one. I plugged everything in like that. I downloaded Audacity for free, and we went. And if you listen to that first year, it sounds absolutely awful. It sounds like we're in a wind tunnel. You know, there's a terrible hiss. There's an electrical buzzing noise on all the episodes. I think our first episode was like an hour long because we were just like stumbling with everything that we wanted to say and everything like that. Yeah, so we started very ugly. So this is how it started. Again, this is the corner of the place. We just had old furniture that they were getting rid of. I asked them to drill holes in it so we could put the boom mics in, all that kind of stuff. And this is how it's going. Now we have a full set with theatrical lighting and new microphones, and we decorated, and we have the shelves in the back, and we do the whole thing. Okay, so you could say that took 6 years to get there, though. Okay, so it's not something that happened overnight. It took a very long time to get there. And like I said, at this point, we're up to 348 episodes, and tomorrow is 349.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
On Zoom
Yes.
calls,
Uh-huh.
add like a virtual background.
You can.
It can be done on this too?
You can. If you're recording the video, and yeah, you can absolutely do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So we are in the, it boggles my mind that this is the case, but we're in the top 10% of podcasts in the world. I don't know how that's possible, but we are. We do have a blog. We were featured in Newsday. So, you know, we went to YouTube maybe 2 years ago. We went to, no, episode 300. So, no, less than a year ago, we were on YouTube. So 300, we started the video portion of the podcast. And up to that, we had 299 audio-only episodes, which we were posting on YouTube after a certain period of time, but it was just the audio. So people were listening on YouTube, but just the audio portion of it. So we're evolving into a more community-based subjects, not just about the library, about people and places in our community, and we're still learning after 6 years. So it becomes like something, you know, we talk about pop culture, we talk about, you know, sometimes we'll talk about food, we'll talk about movies, books, all that kind of stuff. We always bring it back to the library, though. So if we're talking about food, you know, maybe it's a new place in the community that we could talk about.
How many people do you have tuning in? Do you know that?
Yes. So on average, I think we're doing 50 or 60 downloads audio and about 30 to 40 video views. So about 100, okay? So, and that brings up a good point. I know we all would love to be the next Joe Rogan, okay? You know, and have millions and millions of viewers, but that's honestly should not be your goal. Your goal is to connect to your customers, your local people, the people who are going to use your business, the people who you're going to touch, right? And I tell you this, our administration would be thrilled if this group of people that I have here today came to every single one of our programs, okay? That is a win for the library. So all of you here, that's our like average, you know, like an average download on the first day. So the first day, everyone in this room will download our episode. The administration would be thrilled that everybody listened to us on that first day, okay? So,
Are you available for questions later on?
yes, I'm always available. I'm a librarian. That's what we do. We share that info. So marketing your podcast. You want to build your audience. So this is how you build your audience. Social networking, word of mouth, that interviewing. So you interview people who are going to connect you with other listeners or viewers who might not have been listeners' reviews in the first place. So obviously, you know, we interviewed a YouTuber, a local YouTuber. At the time we interviewed him, he had 350,000 subscribers. He's up over 6 million now. So he was like, it was an explosive growth for this particular YouTuber. And I did an in-person interview with him, not video at the time, it was just audio. And that average, like I said, we get about that 30 to 50 downloads. That week, we had over 700 people listen to the show. That 1 week, that one show, only that one show. Because he sent all of the people, all of his viewers to us. And they were all commenting on the audio, and they said, "Oh, Hugh sent me, Hugh sent me." You know, it was kind of silly thing. Whenever we have, sometimes we'll have like the local council person on the show. They'll cross-promote the show. Hey, I was on the Middle Country Public Library podcast, and then I get people coming, and people listen to it, like, you know what, I kind of like this. I'll hit subscribe. Okay, so that is how you can build that. We've, you know, again, we've done authors. We've done some local people, Jungle Bob. You know, everybody knows Jungle Bob over here? We had him on the show. So he sends people to us, and they listen to us, and you're not going to get all of them subscribing, but some of them might hit that button. So that's a good thing. All of you here are going to subscribe. I'm going to seek all of you out. If I don't see you subscribe, I'm just kidding. Networking. If you're going to networking events, you know, and people say, "So what do you do?" Say, "Well, I do floral arrangements, but I also have a great podcast about gardening. Here's my card. Come listen to me." That kind of thing, all right? Very nice. Or, this happens a lot too, where you're talking to somebody, you're like, you know what, this person might be a good person to interview on the show, right? Like a customer of yours who had a great experience. You have someone that comes up to you and says, "Oh, thank you so much for what you did. I mean, I did my thing. It worked out great. It's thrilled. Everybody who comes over sees it and says, 'It's wonderful.'" You're like, "You know what? Do you mind? Can I interview for like 6 minutes? I got my phone here. I just want to ask you some questions." And you put that on your show, okay? That is good stuff. That's how you get yourself out there. And of course, if you have a website, you should put your podcast on your website. Also, we mentioned about audience participation. So on YouTube, there's a comment section. On Podbean, there's a comment section. On Apple, there's a review section, so you can review a show, make comments, all that kind of stuff. So you should connect with your audience, and you should ask for feedback, okay? Some of it might not be good, okay? We've had some complaints on the show, and at the same time, we've had, you know, some nice people say nice things about us. We do interact. So if someone calls us out and says, "Hey, you know, last week you mentioned," you know, this happens a lot with our history episodes. You know, you mentioned this, but you know what? You know, that wasn't that platoon, it was this platoon. So we'll mention it. We'll say on the next show, we'll say, "Hey, you know, J134@AOL.com or whatever, the username, you know, call us out. We wanted to, you know, thank him and say, this is blah, 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 blah." So you get that shout out on the show. It's a big deal, okay? We had someone, we do movie chats. So every 10 episodes or so.
You said this was available, this whole thing that you're doing here was available for us to...
You're going to be able to download the presentation. Is that, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to take...
You don't have to take pictures now. You'll have at the very end, you'll take the very important picture at the end. That'll send you to it. Yeah, so we do the movie chats. So we pick a movie from the collection that we haven't seen yet. Most of us haven't seen. We watch the movie, and then we talk about the movie. Okay, we talk like 20 minutes about the movie. So, for example, tomorrow's episode of the podcast, because we're doing spooky stuff. In October, we always do spooky stuff. We're doing Pan's Labyrinth, which is the movie that we're going to talk about on tomorrow's episode. We're recording that today. So we had someone comment in the comments, "Hey, you should do this movie next time." So that's what we did. We said, "Yeah, you know what? That's in our collection. It's a great movie. It's appropriate for all, you know, everybody." So we did that. So that kind of thing, and then we mentioned it, gave a shout out. That's a connection. That's a person who will probably stick with you because you've made that connection. You were on their show and they said your name. So that's a great marketing tool because they're going to tell other people too. Hey, I suggested this, and they came and they listened. So we do some organic marketing. So for example, we have flyers. Initially we had flyers. We made bookmarks. So if you're putting a book on hold, we were randomly putting bookmarks in people's holds. So they pick up their hold, and then they'd open up the book, and they'd have a bookmark in there about the podcast. So it's just like a free, a nice quality bookmark. We have cards that are specific to the podcast. So, we have cards that library cards, cards for us as librarians that tell, adult services or whatnot. But we made a card for all of us to hand out because we do go to Podfest, and we do go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, and we do go to networking meetings where we talk about our podcast. And I have, that did it on its own, wow. And we do speak. I do this program for librarians, for libraries. I have spoken at Podfest about what we do here at the library. So we speak and we get the word out, and that kind of, gets people coming to the website. And I got to say, frankly, we've had some really big jumps in subscribership after we speak somewhere. So it's good stuff. So regarding YouTube, this was an interesting thing. I didn't think this was going to be an issue, but it is, and you learn. You live and you learn. So when we were first started posting on YouTube, I was just letting Podbean, which is our service, use the default thumbnail. So it's the logo of the podcast, it's the title, and it's got like a little graphic of like audio, right? So we started doing that, and we were getting like, 5 or 6 views, whatever. Okay, no big deal. The minute I started making thumbnails, right, like these up here, quadruple the views, right? And now I hate to say what I'm about to say, but I'm sorry. This is a fact. It's not necessarily anecdotal. This is a fact. Every time I put the girls in the thumbnail, I get extra views. Because people are like, oh, who's that? Not me. But them, so I do get extra views. So
They're with the library too?
they're with the library too, yeah. So when I put them in there, or when I put Jimmy in there or something like that, or, we do something silly on the thumbnail, we get extra views. So you market your podcast on YouTube, you want to definitely have a good thumbnail. Okay?
Do you use the
Yes.
same thumbnail for each episode?
No, they're always different thumbnails.
Now, is it the episode, like, would you use a thumbnail of you and your guest as the thumbnail?
Yes,
Or
absolutely.
You don't have to see, like, you're wearing a different outfit or whatever.
Yes, yeah. It's very good to have. I like to, as much as I can possibly do it, I like to take a still from the episode of us laughing or of us, showing something, and I like to make that the thumbnail. Yeah. And sometimes I'll get to the end of the show, recording the show, and I'm like, we need a thumbnail. So we'll stop, we'll make a pose, and then I'll just take that and I'll use that as the thumbnail. Okay.
You make that in Canva?
Yes, Canva. Awesome. Canva's awesome. We have a program coming up. Canva, more Canva program. I don't know when it is, but ask Marlena there down at the desk and she'll tell you. It's the intermediate Canva, yes. You asked for it, right? Yes, see? We listen to our patrons. If you ask for something, we'll get it for you. There you go. I want to give you an example on how businesses are using podcasts as a means of marketing themselves. In addition to making it appear that it's an educational tool as well, which is true, but this company, for example, I thought was very interesting. They are Unbundled Attorney, and their podcast is called the Mastermind Podcast. And these are attorneys who talk about, it's a podcast geared towards lawyers, attorneys. It's a podcast about building your business, your firm's business, like building up the firm, okay? So they'll talk about, triple new client retention and boost your profits overnight. Scale up your law practice. In 12 months, step-to-step guide for rapidly scaling a law practice. And they have a podcast about this, okay? Every week it looks like, right? Or every other week. Does anybody want to guess what this company does?
Law.
What's that?
Law.
Law, yeah, but what do they do though, law? They do that. They actually help law firms build their business. So they're telling people, they're telling those lawyers how to build a business. And they say, hey, if you want more help, or if this is too much for you, guess what we do? We help you build your law firm business. We get you clients. Yeah, yeah. They do customer retention. They do legal services for lawyers, for law firms. So it's a show that as a lawyer, if I was a lawyer, I could go to and I could say, okay, how do I scale up my law practice? And then I watch the whole thing, and at the end, there's a little commercial. Okay,
They monetize that for themselves.
well, they're not monetizing that. They're trying to build their business. That's the whole show is an advertisement for their business. We're going to talk about monetization in a moment, so hold that thought, because we'll get to it. Okay. Discover Long Island. Everybody's heard of the Visitors and Convention Bureau, right? They have a show, and it's nice because they're talking about, things to do on Long Island. But it's also a means of not only advertising the things that we have here on Long Island, but also advertising those individual places that they're talking about. Okay, so if they talk about a vineyard out east, right? They're like hitting they're checking all these boxes, okay? And it's fun and it's entertaining. And this Kristen Jarnigan, she's the head of that, and she's on the show. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, monetization. Here we go. All right. So I mentioned at the beginning. What is your goal here for your podcast? Are you building your business, adding legitimacy to your business, making it part of your business's marketing tool? Or is the podcast the business? If the podcast is the business, then this is going to be very important to you, obviously, because you need to make money on your podcast. Or alternatively, you can use your podcast for your business as a means of adding money. Make a little side hustle, making some dough on your money, on your thing. So we'd all love to make money on our podcast, but the real question is, are you ready to make money? And obviously, we're all ready to make money, but are you positioned in your show to make money? And there's a lot of things that you have to do before you can even get to that point. So we're going to talk about some different ways that you can do it, okay? The first way is advertising. So you're advertising someone else on your show. It works well when you have a high download rate, obviously. The more viewers, the more listeners you have, the more you're going to be able to give to your advertiser, obviously. YouTube advertising requires at least 1,000 subscriptions. Okay, so let's think about that for just a moment. That means if I only have 550 people subscribed to my channel, there's no button to turn on for advertising on YouTube. There's no way you're going to do it. Just doesn't get there. And you'll only make quote-unquote meaningful money with over 10,000 views. Okay? So you need over 10,000 people to view your video in order to make meaningful money. The more listeners, the better chance for higher ad revenue, obviously. So you have like a host-read advertising, and I'm sure you've all heard this. People say, before we get into the show, I just want to talk to you about our sponsor for today's video, Surfshark. It's like Surfshark or Incogni or one of these services or whatnot. The host will read the advertising. Or if it's programmatic, meaning it's part of what you're doing. So maybe your podcast or your video podcast is about some sort of technology, some cybersecurity, and you're talking about a cybersecurity service that's the advertiser. So it's part of your discussion. Okay? Kind of like what that other company does. They're lawyers, and that's their business. Okay? And then again, I mentioned YouTube, and that is basically a button that becomes available to you. You get over 1,000 subs, that little button is not grayed out anymore, and you can hit the check mark, and now you're part of the YouTube advertising system. Okay. Sponsorship. Okay, now with sponsorship, you don't need a minimum number of downloads, but you do have to be relevant for the person to give you money to sponsor, right? I mean, if you only have 5 listeners a week, you know, not necessarily going to be something they're going to give you money to sponsor, all right? But there is money to be made out there. So a lot of that happens with like URL sharing and offer codes, okay? So if you're a gardening podcast, right? And there's this up and coming business out there that's really trying to get out there. They're you know, all natural fertilizer, let's say. They might say, you know what? If you share our URL and your offer code with your audience, we'll give you 50. Bless you. We'll give you $50. You know, just put it in your, you know, do it that way. So that kind of thing. And the sponsor is acknowledged as sponsored by host. Obviously, you see that a lot. Cross-promotion on social media. Check out my new episode where I talk about this great way of fertilizing your garden. And if you watch, get an offer code for 10% off the fertilizer that I used.
How would you put the URL on your podcast?
You
Like
just,
in a corner?
you'd read it. You can read it or you could put it on the screen, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people just read it. It's usually very simple. It's like, you know, show name / whatever, or a company name / show name.
I'm getting very excited about this, but I want to tell you something. On Friday of this week, I'm hosting at a forum, John Avalon. Would that be something that a library would want to be at and see?
I don't know. I don't know who that is, but
John Avalon's running for Congress.
oh, okay, yeah, probably not. And I'll tell you why. We tend not to get into politics, you know.
Not even reporting on it.
Not even report, yeah, we wouldn't report on it, yeah. The farthest I think the library goes is like if the Chamber of Commerce has a meeting and has like a meet the candidates. So we'll just host, you know, we'll have to host the chamber, but yeah, we won't get a podcast. Yes?
On the previous slide, you talked about host-read advertising.
Yes.
Now, what's the difference between that and right here where it says sponsored knowledge or sponsored by host or like you reading, so is the other one where YouTube gives you the ad to read?
No, the advertiser would give you the ad to read. So someone gives you the ad to read.
It's like a sponsorship, they're paying you to read their ad.
Well, no, it's just an ad. So they're going to pay you for the ad, whereas in this way, they're actually sponsoring your show. So the setup might be different. So for an ad read, you pay one price,
Okay.
right? I say, you know, you read this ad, I'll give you $5. Okay? A sponsorship, I might say, I want to sponsor an entire month of your show. I'm giving you $500, regardless of how many times you mention me. I'm the sponsor. Okay? So that's how that works. So you can have a show that has multiple advertisers, but no sponsors, or you can have no advertisers and one sponsor that just covers you for the whole month. It's just different ways it's just a different angle, really, is what it is. And the brand should be complementary, obviously. So, you know, don't pick, if you have a business, don't pick your competition to be the sponsor of the show. Yes, you have a question?
How do you approach a sponsor?
With your show that shows them that you have this many viewers and this many listeners, and that you're beneficial to them. That's how you, yeah. So I'm not.
Like any particular department?
Yeah, you would just, you know, locally, you would just want to go to the owner locally, you know. But again, you want to make sure you don't put the cart before the horse here. If I say, hey, I just started my podcast, you know, do you want to be a sponsor? You know, no, it's not going to work that way. But it's like, look, we've been around for 6 years. I get 150 downloads a week. They're all local downloads because you have analytics with your host.
Businesses have business development offices.
Yeah, that might do that too, yeah, business or marketing
And
departments.
you find out who that person
Yeah,
is.
marketing departments. But if you say, you know, look, I get 150 downloads a week, you know, most of my downloads are in these zip codes because you could see all that data with your analytics on your hosting service. You know, I think it'd be a great match. You know, I'll give you 2 for 1, so I'll do, you know, 2 ads for the price of 1. You know, just get it started and see how it goes. You know, that kind of thing. But you definitely have to have something to give them, which is the fact that you have listeners or viewers. Okay. Another way that people are making money now is memberships. So you might have heard of Patreon. You might have heard of people saying, hey, subscribe to my additional level. There's a service called Supporting Cast. So for this to work, you should have at least 500 downloads per episode. And you have to have more content in addition to your main show to offer. Okay? So if you're doing Patreon, for example, and let's say you're knocking it out of the park every week, you're getting more and more listeners, more and more viewers, and now you're at the point where, hey, I got 3,000, 4,000 subscribers, this is going great. You want to maybe make some more money there, you could do a Patreon and say, if you become a Patreon subscriber and pay $2 a month, because that's like the base, like small like that. $2 a month, you get to listen to the episode a day early. Right? Instead of having to wait until Thursday morning, you can listen to it on Wednesday morning. If you pay $10 a month, you get access to different content that nobody else has access to. So behind the scenes or something like that. And if you pay $100 a month, we do Zoom calls with you. Once a month, we bring all our $100 Patreons in, we do a Zoom call, we do a chat, Friday nights, 2 hours, it's a lot of fun. That kind of thing. That's how you can make money that way. It's actually how a lot of YouTubers now are making money, because YouTube is changing the algorithm on a lot of things and they're making less money. So they need to supplement that loss, and to do that, they're going to Patreon and one of these services to build some more cash, more money on that.
Do you know why?
Why?
Why is YouTube taking money?
Because they want to make more money.
But how do they make more money by taking less money away from the...
Because what they're doing is the advertisers are still advertising. They're just giving less to the creators and more to themselves.
Oh, so the people are advertising on YouTube, not advertising with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And look, if your business, if you have merchandise, if you have apparel, if you're doing meet and greets, that's another way of making some money. But you want to make sure whatever your cost is on the items is not outweighing.
When you say
Yeah.
meet and greet, you're setting up a venue where,
You're setting up like a table. Come visit the podcast team. We're going to be at the farmer's market on Saturday afternoon. We're giving away free prizes, and if you prove that you're a subscriber, we'll give away something, When we were down at one of the conferences, there was a brand new podcasting directory company that said, if you sign up with the service and we see you sign up and you prove that you signed up, we'll give you like a power bank or something like that. So there was like a little game that they were playing, but it's just, you're getting the subscriber and you're giving a little something away. It's an incentive, yeah. So. And again, speaking opportunities, very important. If you have the opportunity, if your show's going, you have the opportunity to speak about what you do in your business and in your show. I was able to do that this year. I spoke at Podfest about the library. It was a very short presentation about, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we offer our patrons. It's kind of a neat thing, because a lot of the people at Podfest, they're paying for studio time, or they're building a studio, and we thought it would be interesting to tell them, hey, look, we're a public library, we have a podcast studio. People actually are coming in and doing their podcast for free. So that was a nice feature that
do
we
all
did.
the county libraries have your facility?
No. People have access to our facility, but other libraries don't necessarily have podcast studios.
So they may or may not.
They may or may not. I do know Sachem does. I'm not certain if Longwood does, but locally, Sachem is the only other one that I know has one that patrons can use. So if you do want, I will tell you right now, Podfest, we saw them advertising it. We said, let's go down. It was an eye-opener for us. It really was the catalyst to us upgrading our equipment, learning different techniques of recording the podcast, learning how to market, do all that kind of stuff. And it's a very organic, homegrown organization. It's a very
What kind of expense did you?
family-oriented.
For that?
For that, the show itself is only like $300, but obviously there's, you know, it's down in Florida, so we had to travel and, you know, but they give you, you know, a cheap hotel rate, and it's January in Florida, in Orlando, so like it's very cheap. You know, like the
Even cheaper
the
than
hotels.
hurricane season.
Yeah, exactly, yes, probably. But there are different podcast shows out there. There's one in New York City. I think every year there's one there. I don't know exactly if it's Podcast Movement or Independent Podcast Conference. Might be in New Jersey, but there are local ones. But I'll tell you, it's just this is the thing about the podcasting. So we go to this every year, the Podfest, and I will say, of the demographic, the group of people, you're going to have maybe 10% of them are millionaires. They're people that are like, I've never heard of them before, but their shows are huge, okay? There's an entrepreneur doing interviews with, you know, the Shark Tank and all this stuff. So they're interviewing big people and they're doing, so 10% are like successful podcasters that you may or may not have heard of. And like 70% of them who are going to the show are making a living. They're not millionaires, they're not struggling, they're making a living. They're able to survive on their podcast and do their thing. And then the balance of that are people either learning because they want to start a podcast, or it's like a side gig, a side hustle, or it's something like you might be doing where you're doing it in addition to your own business. But it's amazing how many people out there are making a living. And I see it, I'm like, I've never heard of this person's podcast before. But then I look them up and I'm like, wow, they have over 1 million subscribers. That's crazy. I've never heard of this podcast. Don't forget, at the beginning of this presentation, I told you there's over, what is that, 1.9 million podcasts out there in the world. So there is money to be made.
Are any of these conferences local?
Yes, I think Independent Podcast Conference, I think that might be in New Jersey or New York City. You just do a search on Google and you'll find the next one that's local. All right, so the moment you've all been waiting for. Our podcast studio here at the Innovation Space, okay? It is, you have 4 microphones. You have a Rodecaster Pro, soundproofed, double pane glass, green screen. You could fit 4 people in here at a time. So you get 2 3-hour sessions available per calendar month. You do have to make an appointment to use the studio. You can do an online, someone asked about, do you teach how to use it? You can either do an online orientation, bless you, or an in-person session where I will sit down with you for a half hour. That's really all it takes. We made sure whatever equipment and software that we purchased for the library is easy to use, and most anybody can use it, okay? I don't want to say it's plug and play, but it's really close to being plug and play, okay? We have professional equipment. We have a Mac Studio, which is a nice, powerful computer in there to do both video and audio editing. I will tell you, we've been doing this for about a year now. The studio's been open for about a year now. I will say it's mostly an audio production studio, mostly. Do I have people doing video in there? Absolutely. Last week I had a professional actress doing voiceover and video work in the studio. So we're able to do it. She was using the green screen. So we're able to do it, but honestly, comfortably, I think it's great for audio, okay? Can you do video? Yes, but for audio, it's perfect. And it's free and open to all. You do not have to be a patron of the library. You just have to take that orientation, okay? So you'll go to our website. I'll show you now before you leave, but you go to the website, you watch a couple videos, I do a couple videos, and then you read some paperwork, you take a couple of quizzes, and you're done. Take you about 25, 30 minutes to finish the orientation. If you're uncomfortable doing that online, you can make an appointment with me, and I'll be happy to sit down with you, like I said, for a half hour. The online orientation is great because it's always available. Me, I'm not always available. So you might have to wait a couple weeks before you meet with me, but at least you can get it done. Okay. Whew. Any questions? Yes.
What's the difference between a YouTuber and a podcast? Because it seems like you kept mentioning posted on,
Yeah.
on YouTube.
So most folks nowadays are posting they're videotaping their podcast in addition to the audio, and they're posting it on YouTube. Because what we're finding is that when you have more of a choice, actually, let me give you that link might be wrong. That's the right link there. When people have more of a choice of actually consuming your show, you're more likely to get more listeners and more viewers.
So should I consider YouTube as another host?
Yes, and that's what's nice about YouTube is that technically YouTube is a free service, and you can technically use them as a host. But remember, if you're just posting to YouTube, you're missing out on everybody who has an iPhone and an Android device. Because most people are using their phone and they're listening to the show using a podcast app. Now, that's not to say that people don't use YouTube, because YouTube has YouTube Music and YouTube Podcasts. It's actually a part of there. They actually have a podcast section of YouTube. But when I say, oh, I'm going to go listen to a podcast, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It's not YouTube, right? I watch something on YouTube. So there's going to be a period of time before people consider YouTube as a podcast go-to. So that's why if you can swing that little extra cost and put your podcast on a host where I can go to Amazon and look up your show when it shows up, because that's one of the services that they'll post to, Amazon and iHeartRadio and Spotify, then I would do that in addition to YouTube if you can do it.
And also all the stats that you showed earlier on that said published.
Yes.
Is there something that's not published? Can you be?
No, it's just the terminology that they're using, kind of terminology, yes.
You kept making reference to downloading an episode.
Yes.
Did you really mean download, or do you mean playing the episode?
No, it is down. When you play an episode, you are downloading it to your device. It does. The file literally gets sent from the server to your device, and it plays.
Is there an opportunity not to download it, just so you can keep it up in the cloud?
Well, it's always in the cloud, but it's not going to be streamed. Most podcast apps do not stream the file. So if I'm in the car and I select a podcast to play, it downloads the entire episode onto your device and plays it. Now, it doesn't necessarily stay on your device, because after a while it'll be deleted just by default. But that's what they count it as. For the audio, they count it as a download. For YouTube, it is counted as a view, which is a stream. So YouTube is a stream, and all the audio podcasting apps are downloads. So you're physically downloading the file, just like you would download a picture.
Yep.
Like you go to a website and you download a picture of the hurricane or whatever. That's considered a download. You're serving a file from them to you.
The other question I have just on content.
Yes.
If you have a local podcast, you're not likely to get 1,000.
Exactly.
Not so much even views or downloads, but even subscribers. The more local it is,
Yes.
you're probably tending not to monetize it as much, right?
Not as much, and that's why you have to get creative with your monetization on that. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with having a little local podcast where you have 25 listeners a week. Because imagining inviting 25 people to your house and every week everyone shows up.